The following is a presentation of the Mat Talk Podcast Network.
You are now tuned into the PA Power Podcast, College Edition, featuring Rob Waltko and Joe Youngblood. PA Power Wrestling. Pennsylvania is wrestling.
How we doing, wrestling fans? This is Joe Youngblood and Rob Walko. Welcome to the Open Room. This week we're going to be previewing Clarion, Franklin and Marshall, and Bloomsburg, rounding out the end of our Pennsylvania schools that we're going to be previewing. And we're also going to follow up with an interview with Keith Ferraro, head coach from Clarion, at the end. Rob, welcome to another podcast here.
Yeah, glad to be here. It's Sunday night. The Steelers just played absolutely horribly, so I'm glad to get my mind off football and talk some wrestling.
Well, I may add that the Eagles just did lose to the Buccaneers today in what was an ugly game. Luckily, I missed it, being at my daughter's field hockey tournament. So, now we got that out of the way. Maybe we'll talk a little fantasy football later, see how your team's doing. We're going to kick things off with Clarion, team that, we'll talk about. But, before we get started, team I think has a lot of promise. And Rob's going to kick us off with that, and I'm going to interject where I can. So, Rob, I'm going to defer to you on Clarion.
Yeah, I think you nailed it there. Definitely a lot of promise with them. Counting off, they have 4 returning national qualifiers from last year or the year before, and then a lot of talent elsewhere. Definitely some guys on the team that could, get to Pittsburgh for the national tournament, and then guys that have been to the tournament that can hopefully climb the ranks. So starting off, we'll start with 125. Last year, their starter was Gavin Park. He's a Brookville kid. He was a true freshman, ended up going 19-15. He jumped in after Jake Gramacki got hurt. My guess is this year he'll probably redshirt. He was small coming in. Didn't have a lot of big wins last year, but was solid, over 500 record. And they did have Tyshawn White transfer in, who's very, very, very talented. Central Dolphin, was a top 35 recruit out of high school. Started his career at Lock Haven. Last year was 3-4 unattached. Not maybe what you'd expect from this guy, but I think maybe a change of scenery could help him out. And I know that Clarion's expecting big things from him. Moving on to 133, a guy I mentioned, Jake Gramacki. He's a former national qualifier at 125. He's bumped up to 133. He was 8-5 last year until he got hurt. He actually has a win over Moisey. Lost to him later on the season. All his losses were to solid guys. He lost to Moisey, Taylor Lamont, Louis Hayes, Sean Russell, but beat Moisey. Solid kid, should make it to nationals again. I'd be very shocked if he didn't qualify. Curious how he'll look at 133, though. Sometimes bumping up is a good thing for guys if they're cutting a lot of weight. A little change in the lineup for Clarion. 141 will not be Brock Zackrell. It'll be Orts. He's another national qualifier for them. He was at 149. I've confirmed that Zackrell is bumping up, and then Orts is going to go down, at least for this year. Apparently Zackrell had some issues making the weight. I wouldn't say issues, but it was hard for him. And then looking to bring Orts down. He was a national qualifier at 149. I think the Clarion coaches think 41 is his more natural weight. And he's looking to build off of that 0-2 performance at nationals. Maybe at the right weight class, he could look to pick up some wins at nationals. Joe, your thoughts on this team?
Well, I think that the addition of Tyshawn White will be an instant upgrade at 125. He is, like you said, was not a blue chip talent coming out of that Central Dauphin program that produced Jeff Upson, but he definitely was on that cusp right below what you would consider blue chip. Making it to the podium a few times in the States and getting in Lock Haven. I think the change of scenery is going to be a good thing for him, breaking this lineup, and he comes in at the right time. This Clarion team, as I said at the beginning of the podcast, a lot of promise, and we'll talk later with Coach Ferraro about how they did it and the upswing that they're on. And again, we talk about these smaller schools and how they compete. They kind of have a blueprint for it right now, looking at what they're doing. And you look at this, and they're built to win to be competitive for a while. Moving on to 133, Gramacki moving up. Again, tough kid. His, like you said, battled some injuries and looking to, again, improve upon what he's doing his senior year. He's got one shot left. You're going to look for him to be, one of those guys that's on the cusp of, qualifying for nationals, if not getting there. And 141 with the flip flop between Zackrell and Orts. Zackrell was tough. I believe went 2-2 at nationals last year as a 7 seed and lost to Ironman in the quarterfinal, and then lost again to Kevin Jack, who got upset, and he got him in the first round of the Wrestlebacks. So he got a tough draw coming out of going to that, dropping down after losing to Ironman. And but again, he's a guy I thought would get on the podium last year. I really truly thought he would, and it didn't happen. Like I said, come March, anything can happen. Upsets happen. No one saw Kevin Jack losing like he did, and it ends up coming back and hurting Zackrell on in the Wrestleback.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more on Zackrell. At the tournament last year, he actually beat Chad Redd in the first round, and he has a win over Sedarian Perry, who All-American, over Nick Lee. So this is a guy that's clearly capable of doing it. It's just having the best day or the best 2-3 days in March, which sometimes are out of your control. Tyler Smith upsets Kevin Jack. Tyler Smith ends up seeing McKenna, and then he had to catch Nick Lee, who was red hot, and Zackrell had to catch Kevin Jack instead of Zackrell and Smith meeting each other where they've beaten each other, where one of them would have gone on the podium. So sometimes it's out of your control with the bracket and just who busts it and who doesn't. Moving on, after Zackrell, or staying on Zackrell a little bit, I think this is a guy that it would be really, really big for the program if he would place. I think 149, he's going to be really strong. He's not going to be focused on his weight. And that's probably the most wide open weight in the country. I don't think there's a heavy favorite there. Whereas everywhere else, I'd say there's probably someone you could pick that you think is going to win. So he's a guy, he could see himself in the semis or the finals. Who knows if he gets hot at the right time. Moving on, 157, Avery Shea. He was the guy that ended up wrestling for them last year. I think he was their starter. He was 21-14. He's the first kid in the lineup that's not from Pennsylvania. He's from Connecticut. My buddy Jack Conroy made sure I mentioned that because he's a proud Connecticut coach and Connecticut wrestler. Decent record. A lot of it was in tournaments. He needs to really make a jump to qualify, I'd say. Evan DeLong at 165. This is one of their better guys. He's probably a guy they can count on qualifying. He was 20-4 last year as a redshirt at 174. The year before, he was 20-10 as a starter at 165. He'll be back down to 165, from what I understand. And then Max Wallabaugh, who was their starter last year, will take a red shirt. Max, of course, is a very talented kid from Florida, really good at Greco. Had an up and down year last year, but I think sometimes it's good to get those guys in the lineup, have them have some growing pains, then they can learn from it on their red shirt. 174, Taylor Cahill. He was 19-12 last year, 11-18 the year before. He's been a spot starter, hasn't wrestled in the conference tournament yet. A lot of close wins. He's improved. His record's improved the last year, but still hasn't had any type of breakthrough win. So I think at this point, you expect him to be a 50-50 guy, maybe a little better, but we'll see. Joe, your thoughts on those guys?
Yeah, Avery Shea, again, I'm going to reiterate what you said. Guy that I like to refer to as this guy who has to turn the corner on what he's done in the past. And, wrestled in the conference tournament last year, went 1-2, 21-14, coming off a true freshman campaign. Now as a sophomore, a year under his belt, a year in that room, a year to get acclimated to Division I, and coming off a year, like he said, he had 21 wins, is pretty quality. And, he's a guy that there's, we talk about potential to be, an NCAA qualifier. And you go to 65, and like you said about DeLong, he's been was a spot starter in 2017, but last year was enjoyed a redshirt year, which he went 20-4, and it's now the rubber meets the road here is his senior year, and see if he's able to put together his 70 career wins in college, and he's going to look to, or they're going to look to him to win matches and qualify for NCAA's. We go to 74 with Cahill. Didn't wrestle, didn't get into the lineup at all last year. Career 36-40 record. Needs to, that's one of the, maybe I wouldn't call it a hole in their lineup, but it's somewhere, it's a part of their lineup where maybe people outside the Clarion program are not expecting much. I'm sure, the coaching staff has high hopes for him. I'm sure Taylor Cahill has high hopes for himself to where he's, going to come in and be a solid contributor to that spot, 174 pounds.
Moving on to their big guys. Looks like the starter at 184 will likely be Tyler Bogoli. He's a redshirt freshman. He was a good high school wrestler. He placed at the NHSCA. He's placed in Fargo. I don't think he ever placed in the state tournament, though, but I know he's tough. I've seen him wrestle. He ended up placing at the University Nationals last spring. So, to do that, you have to beat some pretty good guys. So certainly I think he's a guy that they're excited about, could step in and be a little bit better than maybe people outside the program expect him to be. 97. Outside of Zackrell, I think this might be their best wrestler. Greg Bolsack, he's a national qualifier last year at 184 pounds. He's looking to bump up to 97. The guy is really, really strong. If you've never seen him, he's an ox. I think he's really into weightlifting. He's a really good athlete. He's very tough on top. And he's a guy that you enter at 197 where, that seems like that's a weight where there's a lot of 3-2, 3-1 matches and, one takedown, right? So you could see a guy that is maybe not seated like Kyle Cannell and make the semis, or Machiavello that's just an absolute ox, impossible to score on. He wins the whole darn tournament. Not calling Bolsack to win it, but I think at some point he could probably find himself on the podium. He's a Southwest PA guy, ended up being a 2-time state champ out of South Park. He's a tough kid. I'm excited to see him compete next year. And then Toby Cahill, 14-16 last year as a true freshman, was 1-2 at the EWLs. What really jumped off the charts for me when I looked at his WrestleStat, all his competitions, is he wrestled Thomas Haynes to 11-7 decision. I know there's no moral victories, but I'd like to see that match. I'm curious how he ended up putting up 7 points on Haynes. And if he can do that to Haynes, who says he can't do it to other guys? So maybe he's ready to turn the corner, like you say, and kind of be the guy that can find himself wrestling at nationals. Joe, what are your thoughts on Clarion's big guys and just the team in general?
Well, Bogoli, you said I'll piggyback the tough high school wrestler. I had the opportunity to see him wrestle several times in high school, being from his area. He was on that Exeter team that had Brett Culp, who we'll talk about later when we do Franklin Marshall. He wrestled on the state dual team with Austin DeSanto, and just comes from a good program.
You know who beat that Exeter team in the state tournament?
Who is that?
North Allegheny Tigers.
Yep. I knew that was coming. I knew you set me up on that one. But I let you have your moment. So Bogoli, again, tough guy that his style translates to the next level. Like you said, didn't exactly get him, got him the States in Pennsylvania. But, just a guy that's just tough. And you look at some of his results, and again, he's in a lot of close matches. He's tough to score on. And, maybe struggles himself at times putting points on the board, but if you're keeping points off of it, and you find an opening here and there, that's enough to win a match at the college level. Bolsack, like you said, I agree. I think behind Zackrell, he's their next best wrestler. Definite All-American potential, 197 pounds. I liked how you throw in there that he was a Southwest Pennsylvania native. You love to add that to things. Yes, he is a PA guy from the southwest part of the state. We get it. That's where you're from. And, tough guy to boot. So to make it about Greg Bolsack and not about Southwest PA and you, Rob, going 0-2 at Nationals with 2 pretty close matches. Definitely going to look to improve upon that. And Toby Cahill, the starter coming off a freshman year where he took some lumps, but finished 14-16 as a true freshman, which isn't not exactly easy to do and win a match at the conference tournament. His he can only go up from there. I mean, it was great building foundational start to his career that is hopefully going to project him to it, to better and bigger and better things. So to give my prediction on Clarion, I'm going to, go out on, not on a limb. If I'm going to say they'll be a top 3 team, that's conservative. I'm going to say top 3 team in the EWL. They'll win 10 dual matches, and they'll finish somewhere in the top 38 at NCAAs. Actually, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go a little bit more aggressive on this. I'm going to say, because I think they're going to have 2 All-Americans, I'm going to say that they'll be top 35 at NCAAs with that, with 2 All-Americans. I think Zach Roll and Bolsack will be All-Americans. I think overall they're going to have, qualifier-wise, I think they could have up to 6 qualifiers. I'm going to say Dippery, Gromacki, Zach Roll, Orts, there's your 4, Shea 5. Sorry about that. Yeah, Franklin and Marshall and Maya, it's coming. And, I was... Central Dauphin guys are both that. So thanks for correcting me. Yes, White, Tyson Dippery, Tyshawn White. Then I said Shea, DeLong, and, I already said Bolsack. So there's 6 with the chance for, someone else to slide in there. Depends. And it only takes you getting hot for a little bit of the season to get yourself to the NCAA tournament. So, Rob, what are your thoughts on this year's Clarion team and their potential for All-Americans, record, NCAA qualifiers?
Looking at their schedule, I think 10 wins is a good over-under for them. I'd say 10 is probably where I'd put it. From a qualifier standpoint, I think Gromacki, Orts, Zackrell, DeLong, Bolsack all get to the tournament. I think that Zackrell places. I don't think Bolsack's quite ready to make that jump. He could. I think there's a lot of guys like 4 through 20 at 197 that are pretty competitive or pretty even. But, I think realistically they could push Lock Haven, but I think it's them and Ryder that'll kind of be 2A and 2B in the EWL next year, with Lock Haven being somewhere the cream of the conference.
Well, folks, there you have it. There's our preview of Clarion. We're going to move on to Bloomsburg now. First things first, we're talking about Bloomsburg. And, Rob, I'm sorry we didn't talk about this off air, but speak of Bloomsburg, I'm sure everyone's heard about what happened to Richard Perry. I definitely want to send my thoughts and prayers his way to his family, the tragic accident, and hoping for a speedy recovery. And on top of speedy recovery, I hope to see him back on the mats someday. He's we talked about the RTC down in Philadelphia, and he's an integral part of that. He's on that staff with Brandon Slay, and I know a lot of kids in my area here that have really forged bonds with Richard Perry, because not only is he a good wrestler, he's a good person, and has given a lot back to the sport by helping mentor these younger guys. And it's tough that he had having to endure this. But it sounds like things are getting better. Last I heard, he's having another surgery, and they're hoping that he gets out of the intensive care and that they can move him home to Philadelphia in the next 2 weeks. So definitely want to pass along my wishes for a speedy recovery to him.
Just to piggyback on that, number one, couldn't agree more than with everything that Joe said. Anyone you talk to about Perry just says what a great guy he is. I know 5-6 people that have interacted with him on somewhat of a frequent basis, and just everyone says the same thing. Just a great guy, family man, does the right things. There's a GoFundMe out there for anyone that wants to help his family out. And then Track Wrestling on their website, Andy Hamilton wrote a really nice feature on Richard Perry, just where he comes from, how he started wrestling late, talked to his high school coach. It just kind of talks about what a great guy he is. So definitely praying for him and hope for the best.
All right, so let's get on to Bloomsburg. And coming off a season, they were 6-9. They were 2-4 in the league. And it wasn't the, I guess, best of seasons for them. They did the best with what they had. They had no NCAA qualifiers. They were 5th at the EWL championships, like I said. and probably their marquee win in the season was beating Bucknell 22-20 towards the end. Their starting lineup is...
Ouch.
Yeah, sorry. It was no ill will towards you, Rob, but that probably it. If I'm looking at their schedule and seeing of their 6 wins, Bucknell is probably the marquee win on that slate. Their starting lineup did a lot of guys get a lot of on the mat experience last year. They started 4 true freshmen, and it looks like those guys are going to come back as starters this year. But getting things off 125, Willie Gerard has come out. He's going to be a redshirt sophomore. He's 10-7 last year. He came out of his red shirt to wrestle EWLs and went 0-2. So he didn't have any real wins of note. He beat Gavin Park from Clarion. We talked about had a win over Luke Warner from Lock Haven. But Elijah Oliver, a win over him from Indiana, who's a guy that's up and down, so it's kind of hard to gauge that win. But 10-7 as his sophomore season. We go to 133, and sophomore Marco Macrino is going to be the starter, or looks to be the starter at 133, and he's coming off a year in which he went 3-14 as a true freshman, and it was mostly unattached wrestling, going to a lot of open tournaments. So, he's a guy who got a lot of on the mat experience, but no real marquee wins to put to it. So, 133 is a bit of a maybe a hole for them. And if we back up back to 25, one of the guys that they brought in at 125, maybe find himself at 133 was Sebastian Mateo from Bethlehem Liberty. He's redshirting. He's kind of a fun story, Rob. He was a guy that moved to Bethlehem from New York City, and family moved there. This is a story I got that after I watched him wrestle at the Grizzly Duels last year, and he was an outstanding wrestler there. He in the finals he went 4-5-0 in a day. In the finals, he beat Luke Lucerne from Council Rock North, and the story got on him because there was nothing about him that we could find. Is that he moved from New York City to get a better opportunity. His family moved him, and he's only been wrestling for 2 or 3 years. And he comes in and he beats a guy who was a state medalist the year before. A guy was in the state semifinals, and he's just he's a physical specimen to boot, and freakishly athletic. And I think this is a guy with a really high ceiling, and because he started late, you're going to see him be a late bloomer. So, he probably stays as a redshirt this year, but just on the athleticism alone, he can make a match pretty fun. Now, he didn't qualify for states because he had to come out of that Northeast region. And we know that, when it comes down to it, I think his inexperience maybe showed a little bit down the stretch there in the postseason. He did qualify for regionals, but that regional there, not only do you add in, you have the District 11, which he came from. You also you add in 2 other districts that you're bound to get a quality kid here or there that comes into that region, which is already a meat grinder because it's District 11. So, just to note that Sebastian Mateo, somebody that I've seen wrestle several times, is pretty impressive, and I'm excited to see where wrestling takes him. So, as I talked about Marco Macrino at 133, we go to 141, and Sean Oram is looks to be the starter there, and he's coming off a season true freshman year, which he went 4-16. And again, this is one of those true freshmen we talked about. Not a whole lot of got experience, but I don't know if it's a lot to get excited about. With him as far as what to expect from him. 149, you go with Braden Stolniker, same thing. Another true freshman, come off record a season where he went 4-17. So we hit the 3 of the first 4 are guys that are coming off a true freshman season. And again, the only place you can go, you definitely can improve upon those seasons because they didn't have the best of seasons. So those first 4 weight classes, it's with the exception of Gerard at 125, those could be 3 holes in their first 4, Rob. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely going to be some growing pains. Gerard, he has a funny background. I mean, you look over his wrestle stat. Like you said, he's beaten Elijah Oliver. Oliver's been to the NCAA tournament 2 or 3 times. Like that's a really good win, but admittedly, Oliver is very hot and cold. But the week before, he lost to the guy from Pitt Johnstown, right? So who is Gerard? Basically, you look over his last 6 matches of the season. He went 4-2. He didn't score less than 6 points, I guess he scored 3 in that last loss to Park. But it seems like he scores a lot of points. So maybe a guy that just needs to taper back a little bit and not make as many mistakes. In regards to the rest of the lineup, I don't have a whole lot of tape on these guys. Sebastian Mateo sounds like he might be part of the witness protection program. New York City says he's only been wrestling 2 years, physical specimen, but goes and pulls an upset. So maybe he's not as green as we think. But in all seriousness, I mean, that's a good observation by you. Definitely got to keep an eye on because, maybe he's the next Richard Perry, guy with 2-3 years experience that really takes off in college.
So as we go to 157, we got Nate Newberry coming into his junior year. He's, 11-28 overall. He was 9-16 last year. For a junior, he's a guy who was 0-2 at EWLs. You look down the list at what he's done. He has some difficulties keeping matches close. And, we go back, we look and we go at the eye test, and he doesn't have any big wins. But this year, again, new year, junior year, hopefully he's doing more to become better. And they don't really have anyone that 157 on their roster. And it's Nate Newberry, unless someone from 149 moves up. They have a lot of 49 pounders, 2 of which they're redshirting at 49. It looks to be 2 of the guys they're bringing in, but 57 seems to be another. We look at the lineup; it looks to be like a possible another hole in that lineup. Going to 65, Anthony Vetrano. He was 6-17 as a freshman. Looks to be the starter at 65. Behind him, they have Gavin Hale, freshman from Downingtown West. Tough guy that struggled at the end of the season, didn't make it to states. But getting back to Vetrano, he was 6-17 last year, and he was mostly wrestling unattached as in open tournaments. And again, you look at who he's lost to. He lost his own teammate Nate Newberry last year in a tournament. He's got he doesn't have any big wins over Frankie Gita from Bucknell is probably his biggest win, and that's about it. So again, the 65 looks to potentially be a struggle for them. 74, again, the second after the lineup, Murphy, one of their more experienced guys. He was 14-18 last year. He's 28-35 in his career, and he's a junior, and he's coming off a year. He went 1-2 at the EWL tournament. And looking at his body of work, he's got some close matches, and when he has wrestled the upper level competition, has struggled a bit as far as keeping points off the board. But it's kind of seems to be the MO for a lot of these guys, these smaller schools. When you get to a higher level competition, it's hard to keep points off the board with those better kids. So 184, the starter, probably their best wrestler is Trevor Allard. He's 29-13 last year. He's 61-41 for his career, and is a senior this year. I'll talk more about him when I talk about what I anticipate. But he's had 3 winning records. Was 2-3 at the EWLs. Did not qualify for NCAAs. I believe he took second at EWLs last year. And for him, he's got close loss to Greg Bolsack from Clarion, who we just talked about. Win over Kyle Davis. He's got a close loss to Rob, your guy from Drexel, Alex DeSantis. And I know he probably just said that wrong. So, he's got some some pretty good wins, and it's one of those guys that we talk about needs to turn the corner, needs to get on it and look to improve upon. He's got one shot left to make it on the podium or to make it to NCAAs, and I think making it to NCAAs is a definite possibility for him this year. The other thing I was looking at with this lineup, when we go to talk about we talk about 197 is the starter Logan Womelsdorf. Sorry for that. He's 12-18 last year as a freshman. But I was on their website and looking around on the team website, and Saul Wilkins was listed as a 97-pounder for this year. Another unique guy, started wrestling late, was a heavyweight at Wilkes-Barre GAR, my hometown, but not my high school. And I believe, again, he's another interesting story, like started wrestling as like a junior and was a state qualifier as a junior at heavyweight and built upon that. GAR doesn't even have a wrestling team anymore. All their guys wrestle at my high school, former high school, Coughlin. And now he catapulted that to getting to Bloomsburg, and now he's listed at 197, which leads me to believe that maybe he again, a guy with a high ceiling I believe was a state medalist as a senior in like his second, maybe third year wrestling. Something maybe the projection he's on, and looking at his body of work in the as a college wrestler, as a freshman, he was 5-26. As a sophomore, he was 6-12. And then last year, as a redshirt sophomore, again, wrestling unattached, he went 16-4. So I think his trajectory is high, and he's got a high ceiling for that matter. But we'll see. I don't know. I just feel like there's, I feel like he's probably going down and maybe with intent of being the starter. So I think it's something we monitor. It sounds like probably Logan Womelsdorf is going to reclaim the spot, but don't count Saul Wilkins out. And I think that's due in part too because at heavyweight, Bruce Graber was in the same class with Wilkins, and he was in the Chamonix product, was a state medalist for the Redskins there. And I think it's just Graber's just a bigger guy too. Wilkins wasn't the biggest, tallest of guys. I think maybe 6 foot top at the most, whereas Graber's probably, I think, like 6'4". And Graber's come off a year which he was 19-16. He did go 0-2 at AWLs. But he's another guy. He's probably their second best wrestler and a pretty decent shot to get to NCAAs, as we talked about in prior podcast, especially when we interviewed Coach Acevedo. We talked about Goodhart redshirting last year with the intent that heavyweight was cleaning out this year and going to be kind of wide open. And I think that makes Graber a definite candidate to qualify. So I know I kind of rambled on there, Rob, but what are your thoughts on 65 through 285?
Yeah, I think Allard is a guy that they're going to need to get to the national tournament. He's probably their best shot. Probably a coin flip. He's close enough to get there. Probably can't take many bad losses, but as long as he's steady, he'll qualify. I was looking over at Womelsdorf. We're both kind of screwing that name up, but he hasn't redshirted. So maybe Wilkins goes down and Womelsdorf redshirts. Maybe Womelsdorf can get down to 84 after Allard graduates. I don't know, playing a little bit of GM over here, but maybe that's part of the plan. 6-9 last year. Thinking about it, they're better than they were a couple of years ago. They were terrible. Looks like they have some guys on the record that are on the roster that compete and can go out there and scrap a little bit. So I expect them to hopefully keep improving. Like I said on a previous podcast, they were tough as hell. Whenever I was in college, when Stutzman was there, they were just a really, really gritty, tough team. So would love to see Bloomsburg back in the fight, competing with a bunch of tough, hard-nosed kids. Yeah,
I'm going to go on the record. I'm going to say they're going to be somewhere around 5th in EWL. And I'm going to say 2 NCAA qualifiers. I'm going to go all in on them. I'm going to say Allard and Graber qualify for them. But they don't have an All-American this year. And, once they get to NCAAs, I'm not going to make predictions past that. But I think that they get 2 in. And I echo the same sentiment about how tough Bloomsburg used to be. And, going back even further, guys like Mike Sees at 125, this is a little bit before your time when I was in college, was always so tough. It was a tough out for them. They had the All-American, name escapes right now. He's right from Springford right here.
157, Matt.
Yes.
What the heck was his name?
His brother too. They were Springford. They were both tough. I think they both ended up at state runners up at one point.
I can't believe we're both blanking on it.
Yeah. I remember Stutzman's interview after he did an All-American as a senior, he All-American as a junior, and Stutzman was broken up about it. And it was really like an emotional interview. I was on Flow or something, and more or less saying how they failed him. And like he took it real hard. I think that was the next year that he then left. And took the job at Buffalo. But yeah, Stutzman had that team like always prepared. I mean, they weren't the best wrestlers, but they were always prepared to go out and do battle. And I got to see that those teams that he had in the early to mid 2000s in person. And they, like I said, prepared is one word I would always, can always, if we play word association with a Stutzman coach Bloomsburg team, be prepared. They always did a lot with a little. And hopefully that Bloomsburg can get back to that. They got Marcus Gordon as a head coach, and they do have Russ Hughes as an assistant. So that's not just some name power there. That's just a guy that's been around the block and has coached a lot of places and had a lot of success. So hopefully it works out for them to get back. Now Rob and I have split our duties with Franklin and Marshall. And I'm going to talk about the low half of their lineup. Franklin Marshall, for those that aren't familiar, is a small liberal arts college in south central Pennsylvania. Rob and I talked about this before we got into the broadcast. Like, Mike Rogers is a good coach. And something he does that I really like, and he always puts good assistants around himself. Especially his staff right now. I made the mistake before. I said Tyson Dippery. That's one of the new assistants there. He's got Steve Borgia, former wrestler from Virginia Tech. Again, it was a guy real tough when he was in college. And they get guys that come in and are quality guys. They haven't had All-American since Richard Durso was in 2014. He's also maybe one of their most decorated wrestlers. He was a 4-time NCAA qualifier, and he came out of Malvern Prep. But this year's lineup, looking at the bottom half of the lineup, looks like they're going to go with Mike Simonetti at 125. He's coming off a season his freshman year, which he went 9-22. Again, don't have a lot of tape on Simonetti, and no real. Big wins for him as a freshman, hoping that, working with Tyson Dippery in that room, being a lighter weight guy, I'm sure it's part of his responsibilities. That'll help him to improve upon that. Mark Salvatore is a true freshman who is going to be their 133-pounder as it appears. For the Diplomats. 141 is a guy who I got to see wrestle several times in high school. We talked about that Exeter program that produced Begoli and DeSanto, and there's others, but Brett Culp was, I believe, a 2-time medalist in Pennsylvania. He's coming off a year in which he went 18-14. And the thing about Brett Culp, he's really tough to score on. And if he gets the first takedown, he's going to get the point for riding time. Like, he is just a tough guy on top. He's really tough to score on. And it's indicative of, if you look at his results of his matches, I mean, he does a good job of keeping points off the board. And you also look at the flip side of it. In a lot of matches, he's not scoring a lot of points either. He's just kind of, cruising. Not because I don't know he can't. I think he's just, concerned with winning the match. So I know, Rob, you talked about some of his matches he had. You brought up he had a win over Cedarian Perry, who was an All-American from Eastern Michigan. One of the cool stories that came out of March. But he was 1-2 at EWLs. So it's you losing 2 close ones. So don't know what to think with him. 149, Will Gill looks to be the starter. He's a sophomore, and he's coming off a season in which he went 20-16. Now at 20-16, he was 0-2 at EIWAs. Didn't exactly keep it close with some of the tougher opponents he wrestled. He lost to his own teammate at the Franklin and Marshall Open, Brett Culp, 4-1. He beat Marco Macrino from Bloomsburg, who we just talked about in the Bloomsburg preview. But a lot of his other matches with higher-level guys he struggled with. Matt Kolodzik, lost major decision to him. I guess maybe the positive thing is he was 20-16 as a freshman. And again, that's something you could build on. You win 20 matches as a starter. He wasn't like he was wrestling in a lot of open tournaments, and he got into the lineup at the end of the season to wrestle one dual meet and then eat IWA. So, 20-16, 20 matches kind of, for their schedules, 20 matches and wrestle all those opens. That's still something to build upon for a true freshman year. So looking at the first 4 weight classes there, Rob, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think just looking over it, I think Culp's probably their best lightweight that they have on the roster. Like you said, he's got a funky style. He's not easy to wrestle, and so does Tyson Dippery, right? Dippery's really tough on top, so maybe they'll mesh, and he'll be able to take a couple steps forward this year. While you were going at the lightweight preview, I ended up looking up Bloomsburg's results. Matt Moley is the guy that we couldn't think of, the All-American, and he actually All-American twice, as a sophomore and junior, but as a senior was the 9 seed. He lost to Justin Gaethje, who fights in the UFC, and then he lost to Adam Hall in the round of 12 to not place, and certainly a good career for him, but it was bugging me. I couldn't believe we couldn't remember his name, so I wanted to look it up.
Yeah, his brother was Mike Moley. I believe at some point they each have a silver medal from states. Matt Moley lost to Zach Kemmer in the state final. I guess it was the Kemmer maybe his junior year and Moley's senior year. I don't think they graduated the same year. Could be wrong on that one, but I remember that it was like a 3-1 match in overtime or 3-2, something really close. I want to say they also wrestled that year in the district final and the regional final, and then again in the state final, because they both came out, and they were in the same conference as well, like Upper Perk and Springford. So they knew each other well, and it wasn't surprised that it was a real close match. And like I said, I think it was overtime, in fact. If that was Kemmer's junior year, it was the year he was like 55-0 and was just had a phenomenal year, 56-0 or something like that, where he just wrestled everyone and anyone. He won. I think he won Beast. I think he won Reno. They had a loaded schedule that year. Getting back onto the diplomats here, 157. We have Emmett LeCastri as the junior starter. He's 25-37 for his career. Was a starter last year for the diplomats. Went 11-20. Didn't score a whole lot of points. Lost some close matches, but again, we talked about wrestling those guys at the higher level. Really didn't do so hot. Again, I like to say, from here he can really only go up. But no marquee wins for him as a sophomore, as a starter. So as a junior, they're gonna expect more out of him. Rob, what do you got at 65? Yeah,
I think I don't know. I mean, they got a couple guys here. Might want to go with the youth movement just to get them some experience, but I think regardless, any way you cut it, they're definitely not going to get a ton of production here at the conference tournament or qualifying for the national tournament, I wouldn't think. Moving forward, like Joe said, we split these guys up, so we each have 1.5 teams that we do this week. So I'll do the back half of Franklin and Marshall. The Diplomats lineup. Jimmy Stillerman was their starter last year at 174. We'll stay at 165 with Jacob Connors. He's a senior. He was 5-19 last year as a starter. No notable wins. Honestly, don't expect much production here. 174, there's a guy named Jimmy Stylerman. He was their starter as a true freshman. He redshirted last year. His career record's 15-41. He was better last year than he was the year before. Like Joe said, I think this is a well-coached team. I just think they maybe have some issues or some handicaps when it comes to getting kids admitted and scholarship money and all that good stuff. So I know that the coaches are doing their job and these kids are trying hard. It's just, sometimes you start behind the 8 ball. Anthony Mancini at 184. He's probably their second best guy. Him and Pelusi are definitely their two best. He was a fringe qualifier the year before last. He redshirted last year. He's beaten a few national qualifiers. He's someone that I think they could probably expect to get to the tournament. I think anything short of that would probably be a huge disappointment for him. But he's a tough kid. He's good on top. He's not easy to score points on, and someone that is probably a bright spot in their lineup. Joe, your thoughts on the first three weights here?
Well, looking at 65 and 74, Connors, like you said, you can't expect a whole lot of production there. And then you go to Stillerman at 74, and wrestling unattached is a redshirting last year and 7-19. I don't know how much you can expect from 74 either. Anthony Mancini, though, like you said, is a guy that I would say has a legit shot to qualify if his career continues in the upward swing. He's a redshirt senior. He has 71 career victories. This Mancini has no relation to Dan Mancini from Owen J. Roberts, that we know that Jeff, likes to overlook from time to time. So maybe Jeff, if you're listening, we haven't forgot that. But looking at
good thing that Jeff isn't on the voting committee for seeds or the RPI rankings or whatever it is, because Anthony Mancini would definitely get the short end of the stick.
Based on name association alone, would suffer as a result. But Mancini, again, like he's coming off back-to-back seasons where, and granted, one was a redshirt year where he won 23 plus matches in both of them. In the year before his junior year, when he was at 184 and was a starter, again, had win over Gentile, win over DeSantis from Drexel, was there, win over Bolsack, win over these guys they should be beating. He lost to Miles Martin in Midlands 12-10 sudden victory. So he's right there. I mean, you're looking at these matches that he's in, and some of these won, some of these lost. He's a guy that you would look to definitely be there when the dust settles in March at going in EIWAs with a chance to qualify for nationals.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that he's a guy. I don't think he's necessarily an All-American contention on paper, but should get to the NCAA tournament. 97, Philip Robledo. He's career record 40-38. He started his career at the University of Maryland, transferred to F&M. He was their starter last year, was 0-2 at the EIWAs. Look for him to improve on that. Looking at his record, probably somewhere in the middle in terms of talent with this team. And then Antonio Pelusi, he's a returning NCAA qualifier. I think he's their best wrestler. He won a couple matches at the NCAA tournament. Probably a guy that, if anyone is going to place on this team this year or be wrestling in the round of 12, round of 16, it's probably him. Prediction for the team, realistically, I think they get qualifiers at 84 and 285. I think they're somewhere towards the bottom of the EIWAs with ahead of Sacred Heart, ahead of Hofstra, but then kind of leading that next pack after them. No All-Americans, but I think that they're a well-coached team. I think that from time to time they're going to get good wrestlers. It's just putting together 10 really, really solid athletes on the mat for them probably will be a struggle now and long term unless something changes. Joe, what are your thoughts on that? Am I being too harsh or am I being pretty realistic there?
Yes and no. I think they get 3 qualifiers. I think Culp finds a way in at 41. I think you're right with Mancini and Pelusi, and I'm going one step further. Pelusi going in there with the experience, having been there before, going 2-2 at NCAAs. I'm going to say Pelusi. We talked about it. We've talked about it now for several podcasts about how wide open we believe heavyweight to be. I'm going to say Pelusi gets on and becomes, their first All-American since 2014. And before that, do you want to take a guess? I don't know if you looked it up, Rob. When was their last All-American before Richard Durso in 2014? Did you take it? Did you happen to come across that?
I didn't look it up. I know it's been a really long time, if ever. I know that Justin Herbert, when he qualified in 2009 for them, he was their first qualifier in like 10 years at least. So, fill me in. Who was their last All-American?
The name escapes me, but I know it was 1981 before Richard Durso. So there's a big drought there, and I don't see the drought going that long again. I think, he gets on. Pelusi gets on the podium from this year. Maybe 7th or 8th place, but I think he does it, and again, it validates that program. We've talked about doing so much with so little. Like, Franklin and Marshall, like their enrollment is tiny. They're just a small liberal arts college that competes at Division I level, like along the lines of like a Sacred Heart. It is, but I think they've had more success recently than Sacred Heart at an individual and a team level. It's really neat to see a team that this small compete on a large scale. So I'm going to say that they'll. I agree with their placement at EIWAs, but I'm going to say they get 3 qualifiers to the tournament and 1 All-American, which is a lot more than other teams can say that we've previewed.
How many All-Americans have we predicted from Pennsylvania? I feel like every team we're like, yeah, they're heavyweights going All-American. So looking back, we might have an all Pennsylvania podium at the heavyweight division, or either that, or we're giving everyone too much credit.
I'd say maybe a little bit of both would be fair assessment of that.
I'd love to see Franklin and Marshall get one. Obviously, I'd love to see Bucknell get one. Same with Clarion. That's where my brother wrestled, so that's a team I always cheer for. But, looking at it realistically, every coach we've had on here has had an All-American drought or hasn't coached an All-American where they're currently at. So hopefully we can help all those schools break the streak.
Yeah, it would be phenomenal. Just for all these Pennsylvania schools to get guys in the podium. I hope, we're doing this in a year and we're talking about, they had this All-American and each team that we preview had some kind of success at the NCAA tournament. Although I'm not sure every team we've previewed will have a qualifier this year. We talked about some of them earlier in our other podcasts, but it is what it is. So moving on, Rob, we're going to change gears here. We're going to get Keith Ferraro on the phone, and Rob was instrumental in getting his info and getting us hooked up with him. So Rob, thanks. Stay tuned so we can get Keith on and maybe pick his brain a little bit. Always sit still and on the edge of your seat and wait for Rob's what if question. Rob, you got it locked and loaded?
Oh yeah, I don't know if I'm going to make him squirm or what.
It's now time for our interview with Coach Keith Ferraro from Clarion. Keith, thanks for coming on tonight and having having a little chat with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Rob, I'm going to let you kick things off here with your question. I know you wanted to dig right in, so.
Yeah, Keith, you took over, I believe, in 2014-15, and you guys went 1-16. That was a rough year. Matthews transferred. I think Justin Arthur transferred. Zackrell was in redshirt. And last year, you guys went 10-7. You returned multiple national qualifiers. I think 4 guys on roster right now have been to the nationals. What was that building process like? And what was maybe that first year like? Did you think you guys would be this competitive this quick or what?
Well, we really did kind of, as a group, turn things around pretty quick, I think, even relative to other turnarounds. And I'll be honest. I mean, I didn't say it at the time, but when we were 1-16, we really, on the mat anyways, we were one of the worst teams in the country. And, I liked a lot of the kids on that team, and, it was a long, long year, and, it tested a lot of people. But, as far as what we did moving forward, we just really focused on getting great people. It wasn't even so much about what they could do on the mat, but it was, there was something that really wasn't public at the time. I can talk about it now. our APR score was really low. We were, this is something that nobody really knows, but our heels were kind of back. Well, they weren't kind of back. We were on the cliff. If one guy would have sneezed, we'd have been in postseason ineligible. And nobody really knew that. So, what do you do when you're bad, and you're not performing well, and you have money to spend, but you can only spend it on guarantees? We couldn't go out and invest in a guy that was questionable. So it was a tough time. And, one of the things that I'm proudest of this total rebuild was we got the APR score. Now we're one of the best scores in the country. So we went from, it's a 4-year average, and we were as low as you can be and still be eligible for the postseason. And now we're one of the best teams in the country, APR score wise. And it's something we're really proud of. And so what that led to was it led to us recruiting just locks as people. They had to be reliable, good students, good people, and people that made our program, look good. So we did that. And the interesting thing that happened, as we passed up recruits that really would have helped us on the mat, but were questionable, is we ended up with a room full of people that we could count on, and they got better quick. They were maybe not as talented as the recruiting classes that other schools were getting, but they were great people that showed up on time and did the right things, and they were on board with where we were headed as a program. They say, when they say rising tide lifts all ships or something like that, and that kind of is what happened, and so it's kind of led to where we are now, which is, obviously we have to continue to add more talent to our program, but we haven't lost sight of what's really important in Clarion and what we kind of define ourselves as, and that is a program with a great culture and with great kids that do the right things and live the right lifestyle. And, that's how we continue to move forward as we try to add talent to the program.
So that leads me to my follow-up question, Keith. That you take over and you're the guy. What was the learning curve like? Being relatively new at that point, still to college wrestling, and from the coaching aspect of it, and how did that play into it? How did that make the challenge that much more difficult?
Well, honestly, I think I was kind of set up for it, and I'll tell you why. I don't know if you know this, but before I was coaching at Clarion as the assistant, I was on staff at Brookville, and we talked before we went live here about high school wrestling a little bit, and before I was at Clarion, I coached at Brookville, and we were kind of bad when I got back into the program, and I was Dave Klepfer's assistant. He, in my opinion, one of the best high school coaches in the country, best coaches period in the country. He's great. And I went through it once already, and I saw what's important in a rebuild and what sets you back. And so I felt like I was kind of equipped to do it, honestly. I knew it was going to be hard, and I knew it could be kind of a longer process than what we wanted at Clarion, but I'd seen some important things in my experience at Brookville with Klepfer. And so I guess I had confidence, even when it was really ugly and maybe other people didn't see it the whole time. I knew I had faith that we were going to do the right things and we were going to pull out of it, so although when I was going through it at Brookville, I said, I'm never doing this again. I'm never doing a rebuild again anywhere. But I guess, life has a funny way of working out. But, it's a long battle. In my opinion, it's easy for me to say because I've been through it. But it's one of the hardest things to do in sports is to take a program that's really struggling and pull it out of the depths, and it's not something you do as a coach. It's something you have to try to surround yourself with people that are willing to see the mission through. And, in my case at Clarion, that was recruiting hard-nosed, hard-working kids. They maybe weren't the most talented guys, out there, but they were great people. So that's kind of the model. And, I think the one thing that helped me keep my composure through the process was just, when I was young and at Brookville, it happened a lot slower than I expected it to. And I think that's natural. And so I had a little better idea of what to expect at Clarion, and, they're different levels, and you can't go out and recruit a new team of high school kids, so it was a different process. But a lot of the lessons that were important I took from Brookville.
So when you were at Brookville, and I know, bear with me on the question here. So you're at Brookville. Did you ever think that you'd be a college head coach, Division I coach? And follow-up question to that, did you expect it to happen so quickly?
No and no. Honestly, I'm a rarity in this sport. A lot of people, they make it their life mission. They say, I'm going to coach a college team. And that's it, and they set their sights on it and they go get it. And I admire everybody that does that. My situation was a little different. I was good friends with Troy Letters, and I was teaching at the time, and I wasn't loving it. I was doing fine. I could teach for a while, but I had my eyes open, I'll put it that way, for a lot of different career moves. And we joked a little bit when I'd see Troy, and he'd say, if I'm ever a head coach, I'm going to call you. And the call came one day, and he said, I'm serious. You want to make the move? And I did. I didn't really think about it real long. I just made the move. A lot of people thought I was crazy. There's this, crazy idea out there that teaching's this great profession that you'd be crazy to leave. And I didn't feel that way about it. And I had an opportunity to do what I was doing, but at the college level. And I was, I knew that wasn't an opportunity I was going to get twice. So I pulled the trigger on it, and I enjoyed it right away. And, I was an assistant coach there for 2 years. I never did it with the aspirations to become a head coach. That was the next natural move for me. And then before I knew it, I was moving into the head position and got to work.
So you talked about
kind of how it worked out.
So you talked about you were good friends with Troy, and that he joked about that. He'd call you if you ever got a head coaching job. So it was kind of like the perfect storm, is what you're saying. Then you were maybe not as happy with your teaching career. This opportunity was presented in front of you. Was there anything else about Clarion that it maybe drew you there or called to you?
Yeah, I always had a special. I've always felt highly about Clarion. I grew up 15 minutes away, so when I wanted to go watch a college dual meet, that's where I went. If I went to a clinic, a lot of the times it was at Clarion. I always, even when I chose not to go to Clarion in college, I went to Lock Haven. I was friends with a lot of the guys on the team, so I spent a lot of time in Clarion. I've always had a kind of a close connection with Clarion, even though I didn't wrestle there. And it was perfect. Like you said, it was a perfect storm. It was a lot of luck, and I guess a little bit of courage on my part to be willing to jump out of my comfort zone and try something new. But generally speaking, I got lucky, and I continue to get lucky with the good things that roll my way. So,
Keith, obviously your dad was a legendary coach at Brookville High School, I think in the Pennsylvania Wrestling Hall of Fame. Do you feel like you were maybe destined to do this? I know you said that you didn't grow up your whole life thinking you wanted to be a Division I head coach, but how much of this do you think comes natural to you, and I guess just lessons you might have learned looking at your dad or following your dad your whole life?
Yeah, I don't know. I think about that sometimes. And by the way, I don't think I'm have any kind of special gift. I just work hard, and I've made some good decisions at the right times, and things have gone well. But I'm very far from, being able to mark this down as a total success. I've got a lot of goals that we haven't accomplished yet. But, as far as my dad's influence, it's hard to grow up with a good wrestling coach and not pay attention to what he's doing and focus on how he's making his decisions and why. And there's a lot of things that go on in that relationship that you see that you have to keep your mouth shut about, especially when you're on the team and you watch the process unfold. And I really do think it helps to set guys up for a coaching career, but I think I don't think I'm special. I think there's a lot of great coaches out there and great, kids who grew up with a wrestling coach that have the same kind of judgment I have. I just, I'm just fortunate enough to be in the right spot.
Not to kiss your butt too much, and I know you don't want to toot your own horn, but like we said from the start, you turned a 1-15 or 1-16 team into a 10-7 team. Not you single-handedly, a lot of help from us Clarion Pin Club members, your assistant coaches, and the athletes, but I think you're doing a really good job. Now, with that said, any lessons that you learned from your dad? I don't know, stories that stick out, maybe a kid changing weight classes, or, Joe and I were talking about some Gable stories that we had read back in the day. Like anything you picked up on that maybe you've used on a guy that you're coaching?
Oh, man, that's a great question, but one that I would have to put some thought into. I mean, it's more about just personality that works to me. I mean, my dad was the man. He was really good at what he did, and he was just positive. He was a really positive, hardworking person that, he walked the walk. He wasn't saying one thing and doing another thing. He was loyal and consistent. And yeah, I mean, the one thing that I think really stood out was he, when you're a high school coach, particularly, let's face it, you pull guys out of the hallway, some of them can't really wrestle too well, and you have guys that are helping your team and guys that maybe aren't helping your team as much. But my dad was really good at just making sure every guy was getting the same out of it, whether good or bad. If they weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing, they were being punished. The worst guy would be punished the same way as the best guy, and the worst guy would be rewarded the same way as the best guy on the team. And that was honestly an important thing, I think, with the rebuild, because when you rebuild a program, you have some guys, honestly, maybe if you're rebuilding a Division I wrestling program, you have some guys on the team that probably are over their head, just be honest. And without, I guess, a patience or, understanding how important everybody is on the team, you can make some bad decisions, And I just had seen enough times where it mattered in a program for everybody to be treated fairly and treated the same way that I think it may have helped me some, in some certain decisions that I had to make. And, there's a lot of funny stories about my dad. Some of them probably aren't fit for a podcast, but he was good. He was really good at what he did, and I did learn a lot from him on a daily basis. I was paying attention to what was going on.
So you mentioned earlier having some goals, not hitting a lot of them yet. How important would it be for you guys to get an All-American this year or the next few years? Is that something that you think could snowball, getting maybe better kids, or maybe one All-American turns to 3 or 4? Or, I mean, is that something that you don't really focus on?
Yeah, it's a big goal. I mean, it's a step, and a lot of things need to happen, and it's not. There's a few guys on our team that you could identify as, having the ability to get it done this year. And it's not just, the ball's not just in their court. It's in everybody, it's in every guy that trains with them every day. It's in every coach's, has a role in the process. And at the end of the day, you got to go to the NCAAs and execute. And, obviously we got the guys that can get it done. I'm excited for them to have another opportunity to get it done. But yeah, I'd be lying if I said it wasn't important. It's a step that I feel we need to take, but it takes a lot to make it happen. There's a reason why most guys don't pull it off. It's a very, very hard thing to accomplish. And, I think it's time for Clarion to have an All-American.
Keith, with this season coming up, you have, what are you expecting out of Tyshawn White coming in this year as transferring from Lock Haven?
Yeah. I want to see him pull it off. I want to see him make it. I want to see him become a man at Clarion and get a degree and go out and contribute in the workforce. And I think he's good enough on the mat to be an All-American. I really do. He's the dude can wrestle, and he's doing a great job. He's focused. We'll see. There's also some other good 25-pounders that he's going to battle for the spot with. But all has been good with Tyshawn, and I'm excited, and I'm very much in his corner to see him pull this off and have success at Clarion. I think honestly, he could be a big part of where we're going, as we continue to build.
All right. So, you've done like a great job, right? just selling yourself, with all the questions we've asked, but if there's something that you haven't said that you want to talk about with Clarion right now, here's your opportunity. If you're talking to the recruits now that are possibly listening, potential recruits, what does it mean to be a man at Clarion, as you said earlier, and what are the steps that or the path you show them on how to get there?
Yeah, great. Thanks for giving me that opportunity. The first thing I'll say is I got an incredible staff that they bust their butt every day. They're out working everyone else, I feel, and they're doing it the right way, and they live the lifestyle that we want our guys living. And I obviously couldn't have the team that we've got right now without these guys. So, that's the one thing that I'm really proud about that I'll say before everything else. But, as far as Clarion as a university, it's a really good time. I mean, we're getting, right now, every day I walk out the door to do a visit or a tour with a recruit. And the first thing I see is a $45 million project. Our entire Tippin Gymnasium is being redone. Our wrestling room's going to double in size. We're getting a brand new strength training facility. They're adding an auxiliary gym so we can host some big events. It's going to be a really, really nice facility. We move in there in September. So, like the guys we're recruiting now, that's all they'll ever know, So we're going to be enjoying a new gymnasium. We got a brand new president who's very, very excited about, the growth of our athletic department. She seems to be very supportive. One of the first things she did when she got to town was she met me for coffee at Starbucks, and we talked a lot about athletics and just how important she feels it is to the university. And that says a lot about where we're headed as a university. When you get upper level admin support, it definitely is an important ingredient if you're trying to rebuild an athletic program. But the thing that we're most proud of are the guys on our team. So when recruits come in, one of the biggest disappointments is if a recruit's in town, say for the day, and I don't get an opportunity to get them around the guys, I feel like I've cheated them because they haven't really seen how special it is, the thing that we have going. So, to answer your question, there's a lot of things. I mean, we're fundraising at an unprecedented level. Our RTC continues to, the funding for RTC continues to grow. We got a lot of momentum in a lot of different ways and support that is just endless. Our PIN Club is constantly working behind the scenes to make it a better program with great volunteers. And all those little things that I mentioned are kind of what makes it unique. And the thing that I guess I would relate it to is small town Friday night football. Everybody's doing that this time of year. And there's a sense of community that you can't really get in anything else that happens in your town, throughout the year. Maybe if you have a good wrestling team, it's a little better than that. But, that's the kind of atmosphere that's developing around Clarion Wrestling right now. It's a small town feel. It's a group of people that appreciate each other and the guys on our team that are having success and they act like men around town and people appreciate them. They're really respected in the community and they enjoy going, people see them downtown. They want to shake their hand, get to know them. And that means a lot to me. I think it's important. We want to coach a program that the people in town are excited to support and our guys are on board with it. And, if that sounds good to a recruit, then it's probably going to be a good fit,
Well, taken away from that, maybe most importantly for some people is there's a Starbucks in Clarion,
Yeah, man.
I was just thinking that. I never knew that.
Yeah, it's right in the dorm. It's right in the other side of the street, since I'm trying to sell the university now. The other side of the street in the downstairs of the dorm is a movie theater. So, recruits out there that are listening, you can take your girl out on a date and not even leave the house. Take her to the movies. You don't even have to leave. So it's a good setup.
Just to clarify, is that a color movie theater or is it still black and white?
No, it's state of the art, man. It's beautiful. It's a really nice, and it's set up as a smart classroom, so we can reserve it. Actually, you know what we did? This is an interesting story. we opened it up during the Rio Olympics and when the 74s were wrestling, and we watched like all Bexot's matches that day on the big screen in the movie theater. So people from around town just strolled in. It was pretty neat. We actually watched Beck wrestle Burroughs on the big screen in the movie theater.
Wow. That's really neat. And you having that community aspect, like you said, and the presidential support from the admin support is huge. And would you even say this is like almost like the renaissance of Clarion Wrestling right now?
Oh man, it's a heck of a program to say that about. I mean, to agree to say that would be kind of disrespectful to our history. And you guys know this, I know, but maybe some of the listeners don't. I mean, Clarion was the beast of the East, man. Before the tournament existed, Clarion was just a remarkable program that was consistently finishing high at the NCAAs. And, for me to say this is a renaissance, I don't know, but I will say this: we strive every single day to try to get the program back there. And, I will probably won't ever be comfortable with where we're at because we have such a high bar, but that's fine. It motivates us every day.
Yeah. You shouldn't be complacent, and that's a perfect attitude to have. Like, again, like I said, selling your program, selling you, there's someone, a coach that doesn't get satisfied is the kind of coach that, maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm different, and I'd want to compete for or want my kid to wrestle for because of the push they're going to get from them. So, that's you did a good job of showing us who you were and the listeners, and you can't ask anything more. Like that, you gave a great pitch there, and we really appreciate that.
Yeah, appreciate it.
So, Keith, to end the interview, I always like to do a would you rather and give someone two scenarios. So, for you in particular, I had to put some thought into this, but I came up with one scenario that's NCAA friendly and shouldn't put you in too much of an uncomfortable spot. But, number one, obviously Brookville grad, Pennsylvania wrestling powerhouse, has a rivalry with a school, I guess, about 100 miles west, or maybe not even, Reynolds. And you're obviously a Lock Haven grad and the Clarion wrestling coach, which, Edinburgh maybe is a swear word where you come from. So if you had to choose to wear a Reynolds wrestling t-shirt or an Edinburgh wrestling t-shirt, which would it be?
Oh, man. That's tough. An interesting twist to that is my wife is a professor at Edinburgh. Oh. So, yeah, so that makes it, and she's threatened to bring home Edinburgh gear a few times when she gives me a hard time. I'll be honest, I think I'd go with the Reynolds gear. I mean, I got some guys from Reynolds on the team, and I love them, and I love their coach. When you have a rivalry with somebody, you also gain respect for them. And Coach Hills and then Casey Taylor, to me, they are super, super respectable guys, and they've done a great job with a small school, and they're very important to the sport. So, yeah, I'd wear their shirt. Edinburgh, no offense up there, but I'm going to wear the Reynolds shirt.
Yeah, good point. You're going to get some more Reynolds recruits, hopefully, too, so you could probably wear that shirt and get away with it or have some type of benefit for you.
Building bridges, about building bridges.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Though I don't think you've missed a recruit from Brookville since you've gotten there.
Yeah, maybe here and there. I mean, there's a couple guys for academic reasons that have gone other places, but it's hard not to do that when these guys grow up right in front of you and you know them, and you know their families and you know their background and you know what they're capable of. It's hard to let them go. So yeah, and honestly, it's been big for our program because it's added to that community feeling. I mean, these people can drive 15 minutes and watch a Division I dual meet with. I think at one time we had 4 or 5 starters in the lineup from Brookville in one dual meet once, and that's pretty cool. There's not a whole lot of college programs that could say that they have that kind of pipeline.
No, it's definitely
I'm
unique.
unapologetic about our pipeline at Brookville.
Yeah, I think if it was a different program, it might be a problem. But with all the success Brookville's had, it's probably a good thing. And like you said, good people, which is more important than anything.
Yep, you got it.
All right, Keith. Well, we really appreciate taking some time out of your evening to come on, and we know you had to go out of your way to make this call happen. And Rob and I genuinely appreciate you, like I said, taking the time to do it at this time of the evening. We wish you nothing but the best this season coming up. We hope to check in with you sometime throughout the season and just see where you're at with progress, see how life is in the new building. And
let's do it again. Let's keep this up.
Give us the take on the new digs and how you guys are doing with that. And of course, we're going to be following you and your team as your season progresses. And like I said, if not you or someone from your team, maybe we'll get on the line and we'll talk with them throughout the season and help to spread the good word about Clarion Wrestling.
Great. I appreciate the coverage, fellas.
All right, that'll wrap it up for another week here in the open room with Rob and Joe. Thanks for tuning in. As always, visit PAPowerWrestling.com for all your wrestling needs. Follow us on Twitter at PAPowerWrestle. Give us a thumbs up on Facebook and check out our Instagram. Don't forget, fans, you can subscribe to PA Power Podcast on iTunes and listen to all 3 shows on Spotify. If you want to send any suggestions or questions for the show, email us at collegetalk@PAPowerWrestling.com. Also, don't forget to sign up for the Surge. Rob, Jeff would not be happy with us if we didn't mention the Surge. But seriously, folks, time's running out. Already a lot of tough competitors signed up to come in from different states. It's going to be one of the marquee tournaments of this fall in the preseason to go out and compete in. And as Jeff is saying on his podcast, you want to be in the rankings. You want to show what you got. Come out and prove it. So again, thanks for tuning in. Take care and have a good night.